Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We have a big show for you today. We had huge blockbuster trade in the NFL. One of them being Stefon Diggs traded to the Texans for a second. The Texans also got a fifth and a sixth out of this. Wild, crazy news to wake up to this morning. On top of that, we'll talk about some huge performances last night, a major matchup between Victor Wembenyama, the future of the NBA, and the reigning national champion, reigning world champion Denver Nuggets, and Nikola Jokic, and that matchup was incredible last night. We'll talk about all of that in segment 2. Joel Embiid made his triumphant return to the starting lineup against the Thunder. He played in some game action. We'll break down his performance as well as what that might mean for the Sixers as they try to get better seeding in their little playoff push at the end of the season. And we'll close out our show with some news. There was a ban officially for prop bets on college players in the state of Louisiana. So we will talk about that, the stuff going on around there, and maybe a little bit of baseball while we're at it as well. But before we get into it, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. We'll have a little discussion about what you had to say. You can control the show. If you leave a tip or donation, we'll talk about whatever you are curious about, a burning question. I will answer your questions. We will have a little discussion about what you had to say. Once again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our show with the big news of the day. Bills Pro Bowl wide receiver, most likely a future Hall of Famer if he continues on the track that he is on, Stefon Diggs, traded to the Texans. This is the second time in his career that he's been traded. He was traded to the Bills from the Vikings about 4 years ago in their original trade. You take a look at what the compensation in this trade, it's not quite as much as a lot of people would have expected. It was a second-round pick going to the Bills in exchange for Stefon Diggs, a fifth, and a sixth. So when you combine those two trades together with the Texans trade with the Vikings, and the Texans trade with the Bills now to get Stefon Diggs, you combine them, they have basically gone down 20 spots. They've gone down 19 spots in the draft from 23 to 47, from 23 to 42, and gotten Stefon Diggs. That is masterful work. Masterful work by the Houston Texans front office. This move vaults them, I think, to Super Bowl contenders. You know, you obviously play in a division with some solid teams. You know, the Jaguars kind of collapsed at the end of the season, but they're very good. The Colts, under Anthony Richardson, we're not 100% sure about what they'll be, but they have the ability to be a very good team. And the Titans have had a really, really great offseason. We talked a little bit about that yesterday, actually. But talking about Stefon Diggs and exactly what he's going to do to the Texans, he's been so successful everywhere he's gone. You know, he went to the Bills and immediately they took that next step. You know, C.J. Stroud already has those weapons. He already had Nico Collins. He already had Tank Dell. These two guys that were incredible wide receivers, and now they add Stefon Diggs to that list. That might be the best receiving core in all of football. They have to go. It's a tough AFC. You know, you have to go toe-to-toe with people like Patrick Mahomes. You have to go toe-to-toe with reigning MVP Lamar Jackson, with Justin Herbert. I mean, the Chargers are kind of a mess, but Justin Herbert is still in there. I just went through that entire AFC South division that the Texans are in. Not even to mention Josh Allen, who you just got him from. Josh Allen and the Bills, the Dolphins. It's going to be a bloodbath. The Jets with Aaron Rodgers. The AFC is going to be a bloodbath this year, but I'm really, really excited by the direction the Texans are taking. You know, They go from just last year a team that had the number 2 overall pick to now Super Bowl contenders in one season. That is insane. That never happens. CJ Stroud has come out of nowhere to really become this elite quarterback. People thought he'd be good, but elite is the level that he's playing right now. I don't think I saw a single person predict that. In a stacked AFC, I love that the Texans are building right now. They traded for Joe Mixon. They locked in Dalton Schultz on a nice deal. Got some solid offensive linemen. They are making the most of what they can with the flexible cap that they have. Because in 4 years' time, they're going to have to back up the Brinks trucks and pay C.J. Stroud. They need to win before they have to pay C.J. Stroud. Now, it's not impossible to win after you pay a quarterback. Mahomes has been paid, and they've just won 2 in a row. There's plenty of other examples of quarterbacks getting paid and then winning. But it's a lot harder. And you run into some cap issues like the Chiefs are running into right now. So the Texans can build around this while they have the cap luxury of having all this space, not taken up by one contract by the quarterback. And I love that they're going all in. I love that they're not sitting on their hands and being like, oh, we had a really a surprisingly great season last year. Let's just sit here and be the same. I love that they're going out and making these big moves, making these improvements. The Texans have now definitely become my favorite to win that division. Before, I think it was a little bit of a toss-up. I think they've staked their claim as top of that AFC South, the team to beat there. And I mean, they already won a playoff game last year with C.J. Stroud. So there's no reason not to believe that the Texans adding Stefon Diggs and really just generally improving this entire offseason, there's no reason to believe why they can't be Super Bowl contenders. You go look at the other side of the coin, though, the Bills. And I understand, to a certain extent, why they made this trade, right? There's been drama brewing forever from Stefon Diggs. At the beginning of last season, it was rumored that he wanted out, he was going to hold out, and all that saga. It ended up being nothing. He ended up coming and playing. It was swept under the rug. But there was tension between him and Josh Allen last season, and I don't remember exactly what it is. I think there were rumors saying something about a girl between them. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but there was tension, there was drama, and they needed him out of the building. On top of that, the Bills this offseason have really started to struggle with the cap. This is what happens when you pay Josh Allen billions of dollars. You have to start cutting everywhere else, and they made a lot of sacrifices on the defense. They cut most of their defensive stars. They cut Tre'Davious White. They cut Jordan Poyer. They let Micah Hyde walk. These guys were kind of the face of your defense. They were injured. They're a little bit older, and I understand the moves. They're getting paid a lot of money, but you kind of cut out the heart of that team this offseason. And I know you still have Josh Allen, but the heart of that Bills team is really missing. It's not the same team that people were looking at as the team that, they can just beat the Chiefs, they'll win the Super Bowl. This Bills team has been unable to make it past that threshold, and they're not taking a step forward. Other teams in the AFC are taking steps forward. The Jets are taking big steps forward. The Dolphins are kind of staying in place, but there are there's a lot of stuff going on in Buffalo, and there hasn't really been too many positives this offseason. You would have loved to get more from Stefon Diggs. Now, I don't know exactly what the market was for him, but I'm sure you could have gotten a second and a fourth, or, maybe just for a second you didn't have to give up a fifth and a sixth as well. It just seems a little rushed. And it probably has something to do with the drama. They wanted him out. There's been rumors that he wanted out forever. That's just how Stefon Diggs is. And you can talk about that as a negative for the Texans, this young team, bringing in a veteran that doesn't have the greatest reputation in a locker room. I'm not going to say he's a locker room cancer because he always goes through this honeymoon phase when he breaks out and then he gets a little angry and then he gets traded. But that's all they need him for. They only need him for that honeymoon phase. There are dangers there. There's a reason that Buffalo traded him for a bag of chips. They got caught up in his drama, and that's not something that I tend to evaluate players on. Situations are situational, stuff happens in interpersonal relationship, just cuz I get in a fight with a certain guy doesn't mean I'm going to fight everyone, you know? And maybe I had good reasons, maybe they had good reasons, whatever. I'm not there in the locker room. I don't know exactly what transpired. None of that's been confirmed. But we do know that it kind of wasn't the greatest situation for the Bills, for Stefon Diggs, all of last season. It just kind of didn't work out. So they had to get rid of him. They had to move on. The Bills have not had a very good offseason. They have replaced their kind of solid receiving core of Stefon Diggs and Gabe Davis with Curtis Samuel. They still have Khalil Shakir, who really broke onto the scene last season. But is he going to be enough? I'm not entirely sure. I already mentioned all the defensive losses. It's not really a good look for the Bills, especially in a tough division like the AFC East. They didn't win the division last year. And they have to go up against the Dolphins and the Jets this year instead of just the Dolphins. It's going to be a little tough. And I'm not super convinced that they're going to make the playoffs this season. We'll have to stay tuned, take a look, but overall grade for this trade, I think Texans get an A. You bring in an elite wide receiver. He's only 30 years old, which is a little bit older for football players, but he's still got at least a couple years left before you have to really start worrying about his production. I know he had a down year last season, and it wasn't Stefon Diggs like, but like I was saying before, there is a lot of stuff we don't know about that situation. So I'm giving the Texans an A. I'm giving the Bills a D. Like, I understand you had to get rid of him, but you should have gotten more for him. Maybe a C minus. Maybe a D is a little harsh. A C minus there, but it's not a good look for the Bills. The Bills are kind of floundering. I think the Texans absolutely fleeced them. Not a very good trade. Plenty of stuff to work on. I don't think the Bills are going to be bad. Like I said, they have Josh Allen. He's the second best quarterback in the league. He'll make something work. I know he will. You have James Cook, who I think is a really solid running back. The offensive line is still relatively together. They've got a lot of holes now, but they know where they're targeting. It seems a little more obvious now where they're going to target in the draft, or how they're going to continue to improve. So I'm not too high on the Bills this season, but I do believe that they should be able to fight for that 7th playoff spot in the AFC. One we saw the Steelers get last season. I think the Bills are still better than the Steelers were last season. So there's no reason why they can't make a wild card, but I think the division is out of the cards for them now. But anyway, blockbuster trade. Stefon Diggs goes to the Texans. That's a huge move for them and C.J. Stroud. I'm very excited to see how they're going to split targets in Houston between Stroud, Tank Dell, and Nico Collins. Between Stefon Diggs, Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Because those are three guys that deserve the ball. All three of them. And also Joe Mixon. All of those guys deserve to have the football in their hands. So I'm interested to see exactly how the production is going to be split between those three guys. But that's more fantasy football stuff. We will get into that in September, months from now. Maybe a little bit in August. But anyway, coming up in our second segment, we're going to talk a little bit about Victor Wembenyama, the future of the NBA. He took on Nikola Jokic last night in an incredible matchup between the two of them. Victor Wembenyama is a special player. We'll break down his performance, what it means for the future of the NBA, and more coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.